Okay, this is all about time and motion and how that is conveyed in the visual arts. Okay, so how is a painter supposed to capture the movement or time in an art piece? Well, there's lots of. This is nothing here. This is one way to do it, and that is to tell a story on one canvas, like this one here. The meeting of St. Anthony and St. Paul. On the upper left, we see St. Anthony beginning his journey as he's going to go around through the forest and around the mountain, and he's going to meet up with a temptation, so to speak, get past it, and then meet at the very bottom right St. Paul, who's hiding out actually from the Romans here outside the city as they greet each other. That's one way. He's telling the story in 3 scenes in one painting. Remember, everything on a diagonal is going to be conveying motion. But another way to look at it here in this photograph of this dancer, she creates this grand jeté, is that we kind of, in our minds, take the journey with her step by step by step as she creates that one big leap. And here's the diagonal line being repeated over itself as it swirls in to that vortex. That's motion. It's implied. It's not really there. It's not actually moving, but it's implied by that line. This piece will probably be on your Unit 1 study guide. This is Bernini's Apollo and Daphne. This is a sculpture, so I don't want to hear about contrast. It's just a sculpture it's been shown in a black background, that's all. What conveys this? The story of Apollo and Daphne. Apollo is a Greek god. He looks down from up the heights of Mount Olympus one day and spies a young earthly maiden, a mortal, named Daphne, as she strolls through the forest one day. And as he looks down upon her, he falls instantly in love. So he assumes human form and swoops down to the planet Earth and decides to make her his own, shall we say. He's going to basically have his way with her. So he starts chasing her. Well, she doesn't know him, so she runs away in panic. She doesn't want to be taken that day, so to speak. So she cries up to the gods to save her from this fate, of sexual assault, essentially. And Zeus, who's the main head god, okay, he's really Apollo's father, looks down and he decides to save her by this. You're going to love this. He turns her instantly on the spot into a tree. That's how he's going to save her, and that's how she's going to spend the rest of her life, as a tree. A laurel tree. What are we watching here happening in this sculpture? We're watching the ultimate moment, the dramatic moment of transformation. She's almost in Apollo's grasp, but she is literally being transformed into a tree in front of our very eyes. What conveys this? Well, we see all of the arms, the legs, the drapes, the draping of the clothing, the hair, everything is on a diagonal axis. That conveys movement. And of course, the subject itself, they are running. But another thing that creates that idea of transformation, time, is that we see the texture of the trunk of the tree starting to envelop her lower body, and her toes are actually springing roots from the tips. And the very fingertips and the tips of her hair are turning into leaves. We see that texture there as well. We're watching through those things, the diagonal line of the organic forms of the arms and legs, and the texture and the trunk of the tree and the leaves of the tree. We were watching the ultimate moment. She's being saved. For those of you who know anything about the Olympics, Apollo was the Greek god. The Olympics really was supposed to be all about. He was sort of their symbol. The Greeks used him as a symbol for that, and he always wore a garland of laurel leaves. Apollo did in his hair, and will until forever, as an honoring of Daphne. And that's actually shown in artwork from the Olympics, even today. What's moving here in Dynamism of a Dog on a Leash? Well, almost everything. But what we see here is where the tail is, where the tail was 5 seconds ago, 10 seconds ago, 30 seconds ago, and where it will be in another 10 seconds ahead, and 20 seconds ahead, and 30 seconds ahead. We see literally a recording of where that tail has been and will be over and over again. And we just continue to just loop the loop in our minds, along with everything else. The feet, the leash, all of the dog's legs, his ears, everything is moving and shaking. Oh yes, optics. This is simply a visual trick, deceiving our eyes with just these black and white lines. Oh, and Bridget Riley's series, Cataract number 3. I can't even look at this work. And it's simply lines of different colors, just thin and thickened next to each other, but you can't help but get that waving, oscillating motion there. Ugh. Stroboscopic motion. Okay, well, really, this is what we're talking about here. This is a zoetrope. It's a toy. I've seen them referenced as early as, the 1700s. When you spin this toy, it's a child's toy, and you look inside that spinning drum, it looks like the rider is riding the horse. If any of you have ever done a flip art book, or even on the sides of margins of books or whatever, drawn your own flip art, where you drew each series of drawings and then you sped through them real fast and it looks like it was actually being animated, guess what? You are animators. You are cell animators. That's hand-drawn animation. And this is one of the earliest forms of animation. Today there are 2 other types of animation as well. There's cell animation, which I just mentioned, which is hand-drawn, each frame, hand by hand, okay? And it's still used today. SpongeBob, all the Bugs Bunny cartoons are cell animated. The Kobe Bryant film, Dear Basketball, that's cell animated. There's also stop motion or stop action. So be thinking of things like the old Ray Harryhausen sci-fi films with the big lizard monsters. Those were all stop motion animated. Or Wallace and Gromit. Any real object that is manipulated and photographed over a series of, as it moves slowly, is a very time-consuming type of animation. That's stop motion or stop action. And the last one, of course, is computer, which is incredibly popular and used today, and that is simply done with computer software on a computer. There are 2 forms of art that actually physically move. One is performance art, and one is kinetic art. When you think of anybody who's in kinesiology, it's the same kind of thing. Same word. Performance art could never be construed or misconstrued for theater. You can watch this quick clip, it's only about 2 minutes, and this is a performance art piece. And you'll understand what I mean. But usually in performance art, the human or the artist or both actually physically move, okay? Kinetic art, like this Alexander Mobile, this Calder mobile here, actually physically moves. It can be motorized, it can be wind driven, it can be, water driven. That's where the sculpture usually is moving. Okay, it's got to be a sculpture. That's kinetic art. This Calder mobile here with the red and the black shapes suspended changes its visual form and orientation and the way it looks over the course of the day through motion because it moves. And sometimes media is affected by time. Here is a piece that is affected by time. And this is a pair of cowboy boots that have been made out of it's literally made out of human tissue, human skin. And what happens to human skin when after it's been exposed to the elements for a long time? Well, it will eventually decompose. And that's part of the meaning behind the piece, is that this is meant to actually look awful. It's a commentary about how George Bush II has trampled on, in this artist's view, Mr. Krasnow's view, on the human rights across the world. And so he's taken that boot that he thinks George Bush would be wearing, and he's covered it with the skin of the people he's trampled. Or you have to consider media like this with the sand sculpture that you see above. It will not be permanent. Or this piece here, this wall piece, it's actually toast, made out of toast. And I guess if it gets moldy a piece or breaks, you just simply replace it with another piece toasted just like it. Part of that is part of it is the fact that it's made out of toast. Sometimes media and time you have to kind of be careful about. Ice sculptures, food sculptures, things like that.